The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Kabul as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera adjusted his medical kit one more time. The SEAL team had been deployed to this volatile sector for 3 weeks now, and every day brought new challenges. Marcus had seen enough combat to know that today felt different. The air was thick with tension and the locals seemed more nervous than usual. "Rivera, you ready?" called out Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan, the team leader. His voice carried the weight of responsibility that came with leading men into dangerous territory. Marcus nodded, checking his rifle one final time before securing it across his chest. As the team's primary medic, he carried additional responsibilities that went beyond combat. Every member of his team depended on his skills to bring them home alive. The weight of that responsibility never left his shoulders. The mission was straightforward on paper, but complex in execution. Intelligence had indicated that a high-value target was operating from a compound in the old city. The team's job was to conduct reconnaissance and, if possible, apprehend the target. What made this mission particularly challenging was the civilian population in the area. The narrow streets were always crowded with vendors, children, and families going about their daily lives. As they moved through the winding alleys, Marcus kept his eyes scanning for threats while maintaining awareness of the civilians around them. A group of children played soccer with a makeshift ball near a fountain. Women in colorful scarves hurried past with baskets of vegetables. An elderly man sat outside a tea shop watching the world go by with tired eyes. The normalcy of it all made Marcus both hopeful and nervous. In his experience, the most dangerous situations often looked the most peaceful on the surface. He had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, something felt off about the entire neighborhood. "Contact left," whispered Petty Officer Second Class David Chen through the radio. Marcus immediately shifted his attention to a rooftop, where Chen had spotted movement. Through his scope, Marcus could see 2 figures moving between buildings, but they disappeared before he could get a clear view. The team continued their advance, using hand signals to communicate their positions. Marcus stayed in the middle of the formation, ready to provide medical support to any team member who might need it. His medical training had saved countless lives over the years, both military and civilian. He took pride in his ability to remain calm under pressure and make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. As they approached the target building, the street suddenly became unusually quiet. The children stopped playing. The vendors began packing up their goods with nervous glances toward the rooftops. Even the elderly man at the tea shop had disappeared inside. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as he recognized the signs of an impending ambush. "Something's not right," he whispered into his radio. "Civilians are clearing out fast." Lieutenant Commander Sullivan acknowledged the observation and ordered the team to take defensive positions. They had barely found cover when the first shots rang out. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoed through the narrow streets as bullets struck the walls around them, sending chips of stone flying in all directions. Marcus pressed himself against a concrete barrier, his medical instincts already calculating the best routes to reach any wounded team members. The enemy fire was coming from multiple directions, suggesting a well-coordinated attack. This was exactly the kind of situation that tested every aspect of their training. "Sniper on the east building," called out Petty Officer First Class Tommy Rodriguez. Marcus could hear the distinctive crack of high-powered rifle rounds mixed with the chatter of assault rifles. The enemy had them in a crossfire, and their position was becoming increasingly dangerous. Through the chaos of gunfire and shouting, Marcus heard something that made his blood run cold. A woman's scream, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone in pain. The cry came from a building across the street, where civilians were supposedly taking shelter from the firefight. "Civilian down," Marcus reported, his training immediately shifting into medical mode. He began assessing the tactical situation, looking for a way to reach the wounded person without exposing himself or his team to unnecessary risk. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan's voice crackled through the radio. "Rivera, we need to secure our position first. Civilian rescue is secondary to mission completion." Marcus understood the order, but every fiber of his being as a medic rebelled against leaving someone wounded and suffering. He had taken an oath to save lives regardless of uniform or nationality. The woman's cries continued, growing weaker with each passing moment. The firefight intensified as more enemy combatants joined the battle. Marcus could see muzzle flashes from windows and rooftops surrounding their position. His team was outnumbered and outgunned, but their superior training and discipline kept them in the fight. "We need to move," Rodriguez shouted over the gunfire. "They're trying to flank us from the south." As the team prepared to relocate to a more defensible position, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He had spotted a possible route to the building where the wounded civilian was located. It was dangerous, but his medical training told him that every second counted if he was going to save a life. "Cover me," he called out to Chen, who was positioned with the best field of fire. "I'm going for the civilian." Before anyone could object, Marcus sprinted across the open street, using doorways and abandoned carts for cover. Bullets whined past his head as he ran, but his focus was entirely on reaching the wounded person. Years of combat experience had taught him to block out everything except the immediate objective. He reached the building and quickly located the source of the cries. In a small courtyard behind the main structure, he found a figure lying motionless against a wall. Blood had pooled beneath the person, and Marcus could see that immediate medical attention was critical for survival. As he knelt beside the wounded individual, Marcus began his standard medical assessment. What he discovered in those first few seconds would challenge everything he thought he knew about this mission and change the course of events in ways he could never have imagined. Marcus dropped to his knees beside the wounded figure, his hands immediately moving to assess the injuries. At first glance, it appeared to be a local woman wearing traditional clothing, but something felt wrong. The fabric was too clean, too new for someone living in this war-torn neighborhood. His trained eyes quickly identified multiple gunshot wounds in the torso and leg. "Stay with me," he whispered in English, then repeated the phrase in his limited Pashto. The person's breathing was shallow and labored, indicating possible internal bleeding. Marcus reached for his medical kit, working with the efficiency that had made him one of the most respected medics in his unit. As he cut away the clothing to access the wounds, Marcus felt something hard beneath the fabric. His fingers found what felt like body armor, hidden under the traditional dress. This was no ordinary civilian. The armor was military-grade and expensive. His mind raced through possibilities as he continued his medical assessment. The wounded person's eyes fluttered open, revealing sharp intelligence despite the pain and blood loss. For a moment, their eyes met, and Marcus saw something that made him pause. There was no fear in those eyes, no panic that he would expect from a civilian caught in crossfire. Instead, he saw the calm determination of someone trained for combat situations. "American," the person whispered in accented English, the voice barely audible above the continuing gunfire outside. "Please." Marcus applied pressure to the most severe wound while reaching for his emergency medical supplies. The bleeding was significant but controllable if he worked fast. As he worked, he noticed other details that didn't fit with the civilian cover story. The person's hands showed calluses consistent with weapons training. There were small scars that suggested previous combat injuries. "Who are you?" Marcus asked quietly as he applied a pressure bandage. He kept his voice calm and professional, but his instincts were screaming that this situation was far more complex than it appeared. The wounded person tried to speak, but started coughing up blood. Marcus immediately shifted his position to keep the airway clear. Internal bleeding was more severe than he had initially assessed. Without immediate surgical intervention, this person would not survive much longer. Through his earpiece, he could hear his team coordinating their movement to a new position. The enemy fire had intensified, and staying in one location was becoming increasingly dangerous. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan's voice cut through the radio chatter with increasing urgency. "Rivera, what's your status? We need to move now." Marcus keyed his radio with one hand while maintaining pressure on the wound with the other. "I've got a civilian with multiple GSWs, critical condition. Need 5 more minutes to stabilize. Negative, too hot here. You have 2 minutes, then we extract with or without you." The wounded person grabbed Marcus's wrist with surprising strength. "Not civilian," they whispered, each word requiring tremendous effort. "Lieutenant Sarah Chen, intelligence officer." Marcus felt his world shift. This changed everything. If this person was telling the truth, she was likely an undercover operative. The implications were staggering. What was an American intelligence officer doing in this neighborhood, dressed as a local civilian? "Prove it," Marcus said, continuing his medical work while processing this new information. He had been trained to be skeptical of claims made under duress. With tremendous effort, the wounded officer reached into a hidden pocket in her clothing and produced a small device. Marcus recognized it immediately as a military-grade communication beacon, the type used by special operations and intelligence personnel for emergency extraction. "Cover blown," she gasped. "They know. Compromised operation." Marcus realized that the ambush his team had walked into might not have been random. If this intelligence officer's cover had been compromised, the enemy might have been using her as bait to draw American forces into a trap. His team could be walking into something much larger than they had anticipated. The sound of approaching footsteps made Marcus look up. Two armed men were moving through the courtyard, speaking in rapid Pashto. They hadn't spotted Marcus and the wounded officer yet, but they were searching systematically. Marcus quietly drew his sidearm while maintaining pressure on the woman's wounds. "Can you move?" he whispered. Lieutenant Chen tried to sit up but immediately fell back, her face pale with blood loss. "Negative, leave me." "Get intel back to command." Marcus shook his head. The SEAL creed was clear: never leave a fallen comrade. It didn't matter if this person was originally part of his unit or not. She was American military and she was under his medical care now. The approaching voices grew louder. Marcus could see shadows moving near the entrance to the courtyard. He had perhaps 30 seconds before they would be discovered. His mind calculated options with the cold efficiency of someone trained to make life or death decisions under extreme pressure. He activated his emergency beacon and whispered into his radio, "Team leader, I've got a compromised intel officer. American, requesting immediate extraction support." The response came back immediately from Lieutenant Commander Sullivan. "Confirm American military?" "Confirmed. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Intelligence Division. Multiple critical wounds. Position compromised." Marcus could hear the change in his team leader's voice immediately. The entire dynamic of the mission had just shifted. They were no longer just conducting reconnaissance. They now had a wounded American officer to extract from hostile territory. "Roger that. Initiating emergency extraction protocol. Hold position for 2 minutes." Marcus looked down at Lieutenant Chen, who was fighting to stay conscious. Her breathing was becoming more labored, and he could see signs of shock setting in. 2 minutes might be longer than she could survive without advanced medical intervention. The footsteps in the courtyard grew closer. Marcus made a tactical decision that would put both their lives at greater risk, but might be their only chance for survival. He needed to move her to a more defensible position. Even though moving a patient with internal injuries went against every medical protocol he knew. "This is going to hurt," he warned her, then carefully lifted her into a fireman's carry. Lieutenant Chen bit back a scream as the movement aggravated her injuries, but she remained conscious and alert. Marcus moved as quickly as he dared toward a more covered position near the back of the courtyard. Behind him, he could hear the searchers entering the area where they had been hiding just moments before. They had escaped detection by seconds. As he settled the wounded officer into their new position, Marcus began to understand that this rescue mission was about to become something much more dangerous and complex than anyone had anticipated. Hidden behind a crumbling stone wall, Marcus worked frantically to keep Lieutenant Chen stable while enemy voices grew closer. Her pulse was weak and thready, indicating severe blood loss. Every medical instinct told him she needed surgical intervention within the next few minutes or she wouldn't survive. "Listen to me," Chen whispered, her voice barely audible. "The intelligence, it's not what command thinks. This whole neighborhood is a setup." Marcus continued applying pressure to her wounds while straining to hear approaching footsteps. "What kind of setup? High-value target?" "He's already gone. Has been for days. They're using his compound as bait." Chen coughed, specks of blood appearing on her lips. "Your team? They're walking into a kill zone." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. His brothers were advancing toward what they believed was a routine reconnaissance mission, but they were actually moving into an elaborate ambush. He needed to warn them immediately, but moving from their current position would expose both him and the wounded officer to enemy fire. Through his earpiece, he could hear his team's tactical communications as they approached the target building. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan was coordinating a standard approach pattern, completely unaware of the danger ahead. "Team leader, abort mission," Marcus whispered urgently into his radio. "Intel compromised. Target location is hostile trap." Static filled his earpiece for several seconds before Sullivan's voice returned. "Rivera, say again." "Breaking up." Marcus realized that enemy jamming equipment was interfering with their communications. This confirmed Lieutenant Chen's warning about the sophisticated nature of the ambush. The enemy had planned this operation carefully, using advanced equipment and tactics. "Can't reach them," Marcus told Chen as he checked her pulse again. It was getting weaker. "Radio's being jammed." Chen tried to sit up, her face contorted with pain and determination. "Emergency frequency. Channel 7. Military encryption. Should punch through." Marcus quickly switched his radio to the emergency channel. Military radios were designed with backup frequencies specifically for situations like this. As he adjusted the settings, he heard the unmistakable sound of increased gunfire from the direction his team had gone. "All stations, this is Rivera," he broadcast on the emergency frequency. "Mission compromised. Repeat, mission compromised. Target building is hostile trap. Recommend immediate withdrawal." This time, Sullivan's voice came through clearly. "Rivera, confirm mission status. Are you saying the HVT is not at the target location?" "Negative on HVT presence. Enemy has prepared elaborate ambush using target compound as bait. Compromised intel officer confirms deception operation." Marcus could hear the sound of Sullivan processing this information, while gunfire continued in the background. The team leader's tactical experience would immediately recognize the implications of a sophisticated enemy deception operation. "Roger that. Initiating tactical withdrawal. What's your status for extraction?" Marcus looked down at Lieutenant Chen, who was fighting to remain conscious. Her breathing had become increasingly labored, and he could see signs of shock advancing rapidly. "Wounded officer, critical condition. Will need medical evacuation immediately upon extraction." The enemy searchers were getting closer to their hiding position. Marcus could hear them calling to each other in Pashto, coordinating their search pattern. It was only a matter of minutes before they would be discovered. Chen grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "There's more," she gasped. "The intelligence I gathered before they found me. Enemy has captured American weapons. Planning major attack. What kind of attack?" "Military convoy. Tomorrow morning. They have inside information. Route, timing, everything." Chen's voice was getting weaker with each word. "Hundreds of American soldiers. Sitting ducks." Marcus felt the weight of this new information settling on his shoulders. Not only did he need to save Lieutenant Chen's life and extract safely with his team, but they now possessed intelligence that could prevent a major enemy operation against American forces. He activated his GPS beacon and began transmitting their exact coordinates for extraction. The emergency signal would alert nearby friendly forces to their location and medical emergency status. However, it would also potentially alert enemy forces monitoring radio frequencies. "Extraction beacon active," he radioed to Sullivan. "Be advised, wounded officer has critical intelligence regarding planned enemy attack on American convoy tomorrow." Sullivan's response was immediate. "Roger, intelligence noted. Extraction helicopter inbound, ETA 8 minutes. Can you hold position?" Marcus looked around their hiding spot. The stone wall provided decent cover from small arms fire, but they were essentially trapped. Enemy forces were conducting a systematic search, and 8 minutes felt like an eternity under current circumstances. "Affirm. We'll hold position," Marcus responded, knowing he had little choice. Lieutenant Chen was slipping in and out of consciousness now. Marcus checked her pulse and blood pressure, noting continued deterioration. Even if they extracted successfully, she would need immediate surgical intervention to survive. "Stay with me, Lieutenant," Marcus said, gently tapping her cheek to keep her alert. "Help is coming. I need you to stay conscious and keep talking to me." Chen's eyes opened with effort. "The convoy. Route Delta 7. Sunrise plus 2 hours. They have RPGs. Improvised explosive devices. Planned ambush at kilometer marker 15. Marcus memorized every detail as Chen provided the intelligence. This information could save hundreds of American lives if they could get it back to command in time. The enemy had clearly been planning this operation for weeks, using sophisticated intelligence gathering and preparation. The sound of helicopter rotors began to echo in the distance. Their extraction was approaching, but so were the enemy searchers. Marcus could see armed figures moving systematically through the courtyard, checking every possible hiding place. He drew his sidearm and checked the magazine. If they were discovered before extraction arrived, he would need to defend their position while protecting a critically wounded patient. It was a tactical nightmare that would test every aspect of his combat and medical training. Helicopter approaching, he whispered to Chen. We're going to make it. Just hold on a little longer. But as the sound of rotors grew louder, Marcus realized that the enemy had heard them too. Shouts erupted from multiple directions as hostile forces began converging on their location, determined to prevent the extraction and eliminate the witnesses to their planned ambush. The sound of the approaching helicopter grew louder, but so did the shouts of enemy fighters converging on their position. Marcus could see armed figures moving through the courtyard, their search becoming more urgent as they realized extraction was imminent. He had perhaps 2 minutes before they would be overrun. Lieutenant Chen's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Her skin had become pale and clammy, classic signs of severe shock. Marcus knew that even if they reached the helicopter, she might not survive the flight without immediate medical intervention that went beyond his field capabilities. Marcus, Chen whispered, using his first name for the first time. If I don't make it, make sure command gets the convoy intelligence. Promise me. You're going to make it, Marcus replied firmly, though his medical training told him otherwise. That's not even a discussion. Through his earpiece, he heard Sullivan coordinating with the extraction helicopter. Landing zone is hot. Multiple hostiles converging. Need immediate suppressive fire. The sound of the helicopter's guns opening up echoed across the neighborhood. Marcus could see tracers lighting up the sky as the crew chief laid down covering fire to clear the landing zone. But enemy fighters were too close to their hiding position for the helicopter to provide direct support without risking hitting the wounded officer. Rivera, you need to move to the primary LZ. Sullivan's voice crackled through the radio. Helicopter can't land where you are. Marcus looked at the distance to the designated landing zone. It was approximately 50 yards across open ground, completely exposed to enemy fire. Carrying a critically wounded patient across that distance would be suicide under normal circumstances. Negative on patient movement, Marcus responded. Critical wounds, internal bleeding. Moving her could cause fatal complications. He could hear Sullivan processing this information while coordinating defensive positions with the rest of the team. The helicopter couldn't wait indefinitely in a hostile zone, and every second increased the risk for everyone involved. Lieutenant Chen grabbed Marcus's equipment vest with weak fingers. Leave me, she gasped. Take the intelligence. Save the convoy. Marcus shook his head. SEAL creed. Nobody gets left behind. Ever. He made a tactical decision that went against every medical protocol he knew. Using his emergency medical supplies, he quickly administered a powerful pain medication that would allow Chen to remain conscious, but reduce her suffering during movement. Then he activated an emergency GPS transponder and attached it to her vest. If we get separated, this will help them find you, he explained as he prepared to move her. The enemy searchers were now less than 20 yards away. Marcus could hear their voices clearly as they coordinated their approach. He had seconds to act before they would be discovered and overwhelmed. Drawing his sidearm, Marcus made a decision that would either save their lives or get them both killed. He fired 3 quick shots over the heads of the approaching enemy fighters, not to hit them but to make them take cover and buy precious seconds. The diversion worked. The enemy fighters dove for cover, thinking they were under attack from multiple positions. In the confusion, Marcus lifted Lieutenant Chen and began moving toward a secondary position that offered better concealment and a shorter route to the landing zone. Chen bit back a scream as the movement aggravated her injuries, but she remained conscious and alert. Her military training helped her endure the pain while understanding the tactical necessity of their movement. Helicopter pilot, this is Rivera, Marcus radioed as he moved. Need emergency medical extraction. Critically wounded American intelligence officer. Can you land at secondary LZ? The pilot's voice came back immediately. Negative on secondary LZ, too many obstacles. You need to reach primary extraction point. Marcus realized they had no choice. He would have to carry Lieutenant Chen across the open ground while under enemy fire. It was a tactical situation that had minimal chance of success, but it was their only option. Through his earpiece, he heard Sullivan coordinating suppressive fire from his team. Rivera will provide cover. Move on, my mark. Marcus positioned himself at the edge of their concealment. Lieutenant Chen secured in a modified fireman's carry that would allow him to use his sidearm if necessary. Her breathing was becoming increasingly shallow, and he could feel her pulse weakening against his shoulder. Ready, Marcus radioed. Mark, Sullivan's voice commanded. Marcus sprinted across the open ground as his teammates opened fire on enemy positions. Bullets whined past his head and struck the ground around his feet, but his focus was entirely on reaching the helicopter. Years of physical training and combat experience drove him forward despite the weight of his wounded patient. Halfway across the open space, Marcus felt Lieutenant Chen's body go limp against his shoulder. Her breathing had stopped. Without slowing his advance, he shifted her position to check for a pulse while continuing to run toward the helicopter. The helicopter crew chief was already reaching out to help as Marcus approached the aircraft. Multiple hands grabbed Lieutenant Chen and pulled her into the medical bay while Marcus dove into the helicopter behind her. "Go, go, go," the pilot shouted as enemy fire began impacting the aircraft's armor plating. As the helicopter lifted off, Marcus immediately began emergency resuscitation procedures on Lieutenant Chen. She had gone into cardiac arrest during the movement, exactly what he had feared would happen. Her injuries were too severe for the stress of tactical movement. "I need the emergency medical kit," Marcus shouted to the crew chief over the noise of the engines and ongoing gunfire from below. Working in the cramped space of the helicopter while it maneuvered to avoid enemy fire, Marcus began chest compressions and prepared emergency medications. The flight to the nearest medical facility would take 12 minutes, and Lieutenant Chen's survival depended entirely on his ability to keep her alive during that time. "Come on," Marcus muttered as he worked. "Don't give up now. We need that intelligence." After what felt like an eternity but was actually less than a minute, Lieutenant Chen's heart began beating again. Her pulse was weak and irregular, but she was alive. Marcus continued monitoring her vital signs while preparing for potential complications during the flight. As the helicopter gained altitude and distance from the hostile area, Marcus realized that the most difficult part of their mission was just beginning. They had extracted successfully, but Lieutenant Chen's survival remained uncertain, and the intelligence she carried could prevent a devastating attack on American forces, scheduled to begin in less than 12 hours. The helicopter thundered through the night sky as Marcus worked frantically to keep Lieutenant Chen alive. Her vital signs remained unstable, and he could see signs of internal bleeding that required immediate surgical intervention. The flight medic on board assisted him, but their equipment was limited compared to a hospital operating room. "ETA to medical facility?" Marcus shouted over the engine noise. 8 minutes, the pilot responded. "Medical team is standing by for emergency surgery." Marcus checked Chen's pulse again. It was weak but steady. More importantly, she had regained consciousness and was trying to speak. He leaned close to hear her words over the helicopter noise. "The convoy," she whispered with tremendous effort. "Route Delta 7, sunrise plus 2 hours. Multiple IEDs at kilometer 15. Marcus nodded, committing every detail to memory. "I've got it. Save your strength." But Chen continued talking, her training overriding her physical condition. 3 RPG teams positioned on high ground. Estimated 40 enemy fighters. They have detailed knowledge of convoy composition and timing. As Marcus processed this intelligence, he realized the scope of the planned ambush was much larger than anyone had anticipated. This wasn't just a random attack on a military convoy. It was a sophisticated operation designed to inflict maximum casualties on American forces. "How did they get the convoy information?" Marcus asked. Chen's eyes showed pain and frustration. "Inside source. Someone with access to operational planning. They knew my cover identity, too. Operation was compromised from the beginning. The implications were staggering. If the enemy had an inside source providing operational intelligence, then American forces were facing a much more serious security breach than anyone realized. Every operation could potentially be compromised." The helicopter began its descent toward the forward operating base where medical facilities were located. Marcus could see the landing pad illuminated with floodlights and medical personnel standing by with stretchers and emergency equipment. "Lieutenant," Marcus said urgently, "I need names. Who else knows about tomorrow's convoy route?" Chen struggled to focus her thoughts despite the pain medication and blood loss. "Operations Officer Colonel Matthews. Intelligence Liaison Major Harrison. Convoy Commander Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez. Local Interpreter Ahmed Nazir." Marcus memorized each name as the helicopter touched down. Medical personnel immediately swarmed the aircraft, taking over Chen's care from Marcus. He watched as they transferred her to a stretcher and rushed her toward the surgical facility. Are you injured? A medic asked Marcus as he climbed out of the helicopter. Negative. I need to speak with command immediately. Critical intelligence regarding planned enemy ambush. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan appeared at Marcus's side, having arrived on the extraction helicopter. Debrief can wait until you've been checked by medical. Sir, with respect, it can't wait, Marcus said firmly. Enemy has inside intelligence on convoy operations. Attack planned for tomorrow morning. We need to alert command now. Sullivan's expression immediately became serious. Follow me. They moved quickly to the base operations center where Sullivan led Marcus directly to the senior officer on duty. Major William Thompson looked up from operational maps as they entered the secure briefing room. Sir, Petty Officer Rivera has critical intelligence regarding a planned enemy ambush, Sullivan reported. Marcus quickly relayed everything Lieutenant Chen had told him about the convoy ambush, including the specific details about timing, location, and enemy capabilities. He also reported her concerns about an inside source providing operational intelligence to hostile forces. Major Thompson listened intently, taking notes and asking specific questions about enemy positioning and equipment. When Marcus finished his report, Thompson immediately reached for a secure telephone. This convoy you're talking about, Thompson said while dialing, it's carrying medical supplies to 3 forward outposts. 200 personnel involved in the operation. Marcus felt the weight of those numbers. If the ambush succeeded as planned, it would be one of the most devastating attacks on American forces in months. The enemy had clearly invested significant resources in planning this operation. Sir, Marcus said. Lieutenant Chen also indicated that her cover was blown by someone with knowledge of intelligence operations. The security breach may extend beyond convoy planning. Thompson nodded grimly as he waited for his call to connect. Command, this is Thompson at FOB Alpha. I need to speak with Colonel Matthews immediately regarding tomorrow's convoy operation. As Thompson spoke with higher command, Marcus felt exhaustion beginning to set in. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the rescue operation was fading, leaving him aware of every ache and strain from the mission, but his mind remained focused on the implications of what they had discovered. Sullivan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You did good work out there. Saved her life and potentially saved a lot more lives with this intelligence. How is she? Marcus asked. Lieutenant Chen? Surgery is ongoing. Docs say it's going to be close, but you gave her the best chance possible under the circumstances. Thompson finished his phone call and turned back to Marcus. Colonel Matthews confirms the convoy details you provided. Operation is being suspended pending security review. You may have prevented a massacre. Marcus nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something larger than a single compromised operation. If the enemy had an inside source providing detailed intelligence, how many other operations might be at risk? Sir, what about the security breach? Marcus asked. If someone is providing inside information to the enemy, this convoy might just be the beginning. Thompson's expression showed that he was already considering the same possibilities. That's being handled at levels above my authority, but I can tell you that security protocols are being reviewed immediately. A medical officer entered the briefing room and approached Marcus. The surgery is complete. Lieutenant Chen is stable but critical. She's asking for you. Marcus looked at Sullivan, who nodded permission. As Marcus left the briefing room to check on Lieutenant Chen, he realized that their mission had uncovered a threat that extended far beyond a single ambush. The enemy had infiltrated American operations at a level that could compromise the safety of every soldier in the region. Walking toward the medical facility, Marcus understood that his role as a medic had evolved into something much more complex. He had not only saved a life but potentially uncovered a security breach that could affect the entire war effort. The weight of that responsibility was almost as heavy as the medical kit he had carried into battle just hours earlier. Marcus entered the medical facility where Lieutenant Chen lay connected to various monitors and medical equipment. Despite the surgery and medication, her eyes were alert when she saw him approach. The doctors had told him she would make a full recovery, but it would take weeks of rehabilitation. How are you feeling? Marcus asked, taking a seat beside her bed. Like I got shot multiple times and carried across a battlefield, Chen replied with a weak smile, but alive thanks to you. Marcus could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but also the determination that had kept her conscious long enough to provide critical intelligence. The convoy operation has been suspended. Your information saved a lot of lives. Chen nodded with relief, then her expression became serious again. Marcus, there's more I need to tell you. Things I couldn't say over the radio or in front of others. Marcus leaned closer as Chen lowered her voice to barely above a whisper. The inside source isn't just providing convoy information. They have access to our entire operational database. Every mission, every safe house, every asset we have in the region. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. If someone with that level of access was feeding information to the enemy, then every American operation in the theater was potentially compromised. The safety of thousands of military personnel and intelligence assets was at risk. Do you know who it is? Marcus asked. I had narrowed it down to 3 possibilities before my cover was blown, Chen said. But I couldn't complete the investigation. The evidence is hidden in a safe house in the city. Without it, we can't prove anything. Marcus understood what she was suggesting, and it made his stomach turn. Someone would need to return to the hostile area they had just escaped from, to retrieve evidence that could identify a traitor within American ranks. Where is this safe house? Chen provided detailed directions to a location in the old section of Kabul, along with security codes and protocols for accessing the hidden evidence. It's in a basement room behind a false wall. Everything you need to identify the source is in encrypted files on a hidden drive. As Chen spoke, Marcus realized that this mission was far from over. The medical emergency and tactical extraction had been just the beginning of a much larger operation to protect American forces from a sophisticated enemy intelligence network. Lieutenant Chen, a new voice interrupted their conversation. Marcus turned to see Colonel Matthews entering the medical bay, followed by 2 men in civilian clothing who were obviously intelligence officers. Colonel, Chen acknowledged, trying to sit up despite her injuries. Stay down, Lieutenant. We need to debrief you about the security breach. Colonel Matthews looked at Marcus with the expression that mixed respect and concern. Petty Officer Rivera, your actions today have potentially uncovered the most significant intelligence leak in this theater of operations. One of the civilian officers stepped forward. Agent Williams, CIA, we need to understand exactly what Lieutenant Chen discovered before her cover was compromised. Marcus noticed that Chen's grip tightened on his arm. She was trying to communicate something without speaking, but he couldn't understand what she was warning him about. Lieutenant Chen was investigating suspected leaks in operational security. Marcus reported carefully. She identified the convoy ambush through intercepted enemy communications. Agent Williams nodded and pulled out a digital recorder. We'll need a complete statement from both of you. The security of ongoing operations depends on understanding how much intelligence has been compromised. As Williams spoke, Marcus caught Chen's eye. She was looking directly at Colonel Matthews with an expression that Marcus had learned to recognize during their brief time together. It was the same look she had given him when warning about the convoy ambush. Fear mixed with certainty. Chen squeezed Marcus's arm 3 times in rapid succession. It was a simple signal, but Marcus understood. She was telling him that one of the people in this room was the security leak she had been investigating. Before we begin the formal debrief, Matthews said, we need to secure any physical evidence Lieutenant Chen may have gathered. Do you know the location of her operational materials? Marcus felt the tension in Chen's grip increase. This was the moment she had been dreading. If she revealed the location of the evidence to the wrong person, it would be destroyed before it could expose the traitor. I'll need to speak with Lieutenant Chen privately first, Marcus said, making a split-second decision. Medical protocol requires patient assessment before extended questioning. Agent Williams looked annoyed. This is a matter of national security. Medical protocols can be adjusted. Not by me, Marcus replied firmly. As her treating medic, I'm responsible for her recovery. Excessive stress could cause complications from her surgery. Colonel Matthews studied Marcus carefully. 5 minutes, Petty Officer. Then we need complete cooperation. As the 3 officers left the medical bay, Chen whispered urgently to Marcus. Matthews asked specific questions about my investigation 2 days ago. Questions he shouldn't have known to ask. He's the leak. Marcus felt pieces falling into place. If Colonel Matthews was providing intelligence to the enemy, then he would have known about Chen's investigation and could have exposed her cover. The ambush on Marcus's team might have been designed to eliminate both Chen and any SEAL team that attempted to rescue her. We can't let him get to that evidence, Marcus said. You have to retrieve it before they force me to reveal the location, Chen said. Once Matthews has those files, they'll disappear forever. Marcus understood what she was asking. He would need to return to hostile territory, infiltrate a safe house and retrieve evidence while avoiding both enemy forces and potentially compromised American personnel. It was a mission that would require him to operate completely outside official channels. The safe house location again, Marcus said quietly. Chen quickly repeated the address and security protocols. Marcus, if something happens to me, if I don't survive this, promise me you'll get that evidence to someone you trust completely. Nothing's going to happen to you, Marcus assured her, but he memorized every detail she provided. There's one more thing, Chen whispered as footsteps approached in the hallway. The evidence doesn't just identify Matthews. It shows the enemy has been using him to feed false intelligence back to American forces. Some of our recent mission failures weren't failures at all. They were setups designed to capture or eliminate specific American personnel. The door opened as Colonel Matthews returned with the CIA agents. Marcus realized that he was now in possession of information that could expose a conspiracy reaching much higher than a simple intelligence leak. American soldiers had been deliberately sent into danger by someone they trusted. Time's up, Matthews announced. We need to begin the formal debrief immediately. Marcus looked at Chen one final time, seeing the determination in her eyes despite her weakened condition. She had risked everything to uncover this conspiracy, and now it was up to him to ensure her sacrifice wasn't wasted. Ready when you are, sir, Marcus said, knowing that the most dangerous part of his mission was just beginning. The formal debrief lasted 3 hours, with Colonel Matthews and Agent Williams asking detailed questions about every aspect of the rescue mission. Marcus answered carefully, providing accurate information about the tactical situation while withholding details about the safe house location and Chen's suspicions about Matthews. Throughout the questioning, Marcus watched Colonel Matthews carefully. The man asked probing questions about Chen's condition and whether she had been conscious enough to provide detailed intelligence. His interest seemed focused on determining exactly how much information Chen had shared before losing consciousness. Petty Officer Rivera, Matthews said near the end of the session. Lieutenant Chen mentioned operational materials hidden in the city. Did she provide any specifics about locations or access procedures? Marcus met Matthews' gaze directly. Sir, Lieutenant Chen was in and out of consciousness during most of the extraction. Any information she provided was fragmentary and possibly affected by blood loss and medication. It wasn't technically a lie, but it protected the critical information Chen had entrusted to him. Marcus could see frustration in Matthews' expression, suggesting that his answer wasn't what the colonel had hoped to hear. After the debrief concluded, Marcus was officially released from duty for 12 hours to rest and recover from the mission. Instead of heading to his quarters, he made his way to the communications center where he sent a carefully worded message to his SEAL team commander back at headquarters, using coded language that would be meaningless to most readers but clear to someone with his operational background. Marcus reported suspicions about compromised operational security and requested guidance on handling sensitive intelligence outside normal command channels. The response came back within an hour, equally coded but unmistakably clear. His team commander authorized him to pursue the intelligence using his own judgment and operational discretion. If Marcus's suspicions were correct, then normal command channels could not be trusted. That evening, Marcus approached Lieutenant Commander Sullivan privately. Sir, I need to discuss a sensitive operational matter. Sullivan listened as Marcus carefully explained the situation, including Chen's suspicions about Colonel Matthews and the evidence hidden in the safe house. Sullivan's expression grew increasingly grim as he understood the implications. You're talking about going back into hostile territory to retrieve evidence against a superior officer, Sullivan said finally. If you're wrong about Matthews, this could end your career. And if I'm right, sir, American soldiers will continue dying because someone is feeding our operational plans to the enemy, Marcus replied. Sullivan was quiet for several minutes, weighing the risks and implications. Finally, he nodded. I can't officially authorize this mission, but I can ensure that you have equipment and support if you choose to pursue it independently. I understand. Sir, Marcus, Sullivan said using his first name. If you do this, you'll be operating completely alone. If something goes wrong, we can't come after you through official channels. Understood. But Lieutenant Chen risked everything to uncover this conspiracy. I can't let her sacrifice be wasted. 3 hours after midnight, Marcus slipped out of the forward operating base wearing civilian clothing and carrying minimal equipment. He had memorized the route to the safe house and carried only essential items that wouldn't immediately identify him as American military. If he was captured, the journey through Kabul's darkened streets took 2 hours, moving carefully to avoid both enemy patrols and American checkpoints. Marcus used skills learned in urban warfare training to navigate the complex maze of alleys and side streets leading to the old section of the city. The safe house was located in a building that appeared to be abandoned, but Marcus could see subtle signs of recent maintenance that suggested ongoing use. Following Chen's instructions, he located the hidden entrance and used the security codes she had provided. In the basement, behind a false wall, Marcus found the evidence Chen had described. Encrypted files on a hidden drive contained months of intercepted communications, financial records, and operational reports that painted a clear picture of systematic intelligence leaks. The evidence was overwhelming. Colonel Matthews had been providing detailed operational intelligence to enemy forces for over 6 months. But more disturbing was the revelation that this information had been used not just to prepare ambushes, but to deliberately target specific American personnel for capture or elimination. Marcus recognized names in the files. Soldiers who had been reported as killed in action or missing in action had actually been deliberately sent into situations where the enemy was waiting for them. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. As Marcus prepared to leave with the evidence, he heard footsteps in the building above. Someone else had come to the safe house. Moving quietly, he positioned himself where he could observe without being seen. Colonel Matthews entered the basement, accompanied by 2 men Marcus didn't recognize. They went directly to the hidden compartment, clearly knowing exactly where to look. "The file should be here," Matthews said, his voice carrying clearly in the confined space. "The intelligence officer is still alive," one of the other men replied with a slight accent. "She may have already provided the location to American forces." Marcus realized he was watching a meeting between Colonel Matthews and enemy intelligence operatives. The betrayal was even more extensive than Chen had suspected. Matthews wasn't just leaking information. He was actively collaborating with enemy forces. "We need to eliminate any evidence of our arrangement," Matthews said, "and ensure that Lieutenant Chen doesn't survive to testify about what she discovered." Marcus felt cold anger settle in his chest. These men were discussing murdering a wounded American officer to protect their conspiracy. Everything Chen had suspected was true, and the threat was immediate. Drawing his sidearm, Marcus stepped into view. Nobody moves. The 3 men froze, clearly surprised by his presence. Matthews' expression showed recognition and calculation as he realized his operation had been compromised. "Petty Officer Rivera," Matthews said calmly, "you're interfering with a classified operation." "The only classified operation here is treason," Marcus replied, keeping his weapon trained on the group while backing toward the exit with the evidence. "You don't understand the complexity of this situation," Matthews continued. "Sometimes difficult choices must be made for the greater good." Marcus understood perfectly. He had uncovered a conspiracy that had cost American lives and would continue to do so unless it was stopped. As he reached the stairs, he activated his emergency beacon, sending a signal that would bring his SEAL team to his location. "This ends now," Marcus said, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether justice would be served or whether the conspiracy would claim more victims. The evidence he carried would expose the full scope of the betrayal and ensure that Lieutenant Chen's courage and sacrifice had not been in vain. But first he had to survive long enough to deliver it to people he could trust completely.